Sleep problems in older adults are rarely simple. They don't start with one symptom, and they don't come from one cause. And what surprises most seniors is that 5 basic vitamins, the inexpensive kind you find in any supermarket, line up almost perfectly with the 5 phases of sleep that begin to weaken after 60. I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed, a geriatric physician, and after 25 years working with older adults, this is the pattern I see every day. Sleep doesn't collapse all at once. It breaks phase by phase. First, the ability to downshift, then the emotional quieting, then the deeper neural stability, the circadian alignment, and finally the conversion into deep restorative sleep. When even one of those phases loses its signal, the night becomes fragile. You fall asleep easily, but can't stay asleep. Or you sleep through the first few hours but wake at 2 or 3 a.m., or you wake early feeling as if the night never took hold. And in many of those cases, the missing signal isn't a sedative or a stronger pill or more melatonin. It's one specific vitamin that no longer rises to the level your brain and nervous system once relied on. Today, I'll walk you through all 5 phases and the 5 vitamins that support them. Stay with me until number 1, because that phase determines whether your sleep stays shallow or becomes truly restorative again. And if these insights are helpful so far, tap like, share, and subscribe. It ensures more older adults can access clear, science-based guidance about their sleep. As we age, the night becomes easier to interrupt for reasons most people never connect to biology. Not because sleep gets worse, but because the signals that guide each stage lose strength. The body doesn't downshift as cleanly, the mind doesn't settle as quickly, the nerves don't stay as steady at 2 or 3 a.m., and the internal clock drifts just enough to break tomorrow's rhythm. These aren't random changes. They map to 5 precise phases of the sleep cycle. And each one can falter when a specific vitamin drops below the level your system once relied on. Number 5, vitamin E. The first phase of every night is simple but essential. Your nervous system has to lower its baseline activity so the brain can transition into sleep. After 60, this step becomes shaky. The brain fires a little louder, the background noise sits a little higher, and the moment you lie down, you feel almost ready to sleep, but not fully settled. Vitamin E plays a quiet but important role here. It reduces oxidative firing inside neurons, the tiny electrical fluctuations that make the early minutes of sleep feel unstable. When E is low, those fluctuations increase. And when they increase, seniors get what we call micro-arousals, tiny half-second bursts of wakefulness right as the brain is trying to enter light sleep. You don't notice them consciously. You just know you're tired but not dropping in. A 2012 analysis from the Sleep Health Institute found that older adults with lower vitamin E status had significantly higher early night neural activity, the kind that interrupts the downshift window. Not insomnia, just a disrupted first phase. One of my patients, Harold, age 71, described it perfectly. I could fall asleep, but it felt like my brain was still hovering, not landing. When we added a simple vitamin E source to his evening meal, that hovering sensation eased within 10 days. Not because E makes you sleepy, it doesn't, but because it lets the nervous system quiet evenly, the way it used to. Your brain can't enter the next phase until this first phase is clean. So where do you get vitamin E without supplements? From simple foods: sunflower seeds, plant oils, wheat germ, and a tablespoon of mixed nuts. The trick is timing. You want these foods with dinner, not late at night. Vitamin E doesn't act as a sedative. It acts as a stabilizer, preparing the nervous system hours before sleep begins. For older adults who feel restless at bedtime, who almost fall asleep, but feel one small spark of energy left in the system, this is the vitamin to start with. It strengthens the very first phase of the night, the phase where everything else depends. When the downshift works, the rest of the night has a chance to unfold correctly. Number 4, vitamin B9 folate. If phase 1 is the nervous system lowering its baseline, then phase 2 is where the mind itself has to settle. And this is exactly where many older adults feel the first real crack in their night. Not anxiety, not panic, just a quiet, persistent tension in the background. You're tired, your body wants sleep, but your mind still has a slight buzz, even if you're not thinking about anything specific. This is the phase folate supports. Folate is essential for maintaining the serotonin baseline the brain relies on to quiet emotional activity in the evening. Not the serotonin that affects mood during the day, the slower, subtler tone that helps the mind release the day so the next phase of sleep can form. When folate is low, that tone flattens. And when it flattens, the brain doesn't fully dim, even if the body is already downshifted. Seniors describe it the same way. I'm exhausted, but my mind won't drop. It's not racing. It just won't shut off. It feels bright in my head. A 2014 report from the Sleep and Neurochemistry Group showed that adults with low folate levels were significantly more likely to experience pre-sleep cognitive tension, the very state that delays sleep onset without causing overt anxiety. It's subtle, but powerful. The mind stays one level too active, and sleep takes longer to take hold. One of my patients, Marlene, age 69, had this exact pattern. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't stressed. She simply couldn't ease into sleep, even on quiet evenings. We increased her folate intake at dinner: spinach, a handful of peanuts, and a small portion of whole grains. And within a week, she described something she hadn't felt in years. My mind finally goes dark when the lights go off. That's phase 2 working again. The timing matters. Folate works best with dinner or about an hour after, when your body is already preparing to shift internally. This isn't a sedative. It doesn't force sleep. It supports the emotional quieting that needs to happen so the next phase, deep night stability, can take over smoothly. And this is why vitamin B9 sits at number 4. It doesn't make you sleepy. It simply removes the mental static that keeps you hovering at the edge of sleep instead of crossing into it. For older adults who feel tired but mentally alert, or who spend the first 30 to 60 minutes in bed trying to settle, folate is the phase-specific support that often makes the difference. Number 3, vitamin B12. If the first 2 phases prepare you for sleep, this third phase is what keeps you asleep. Between 2 and 4 in the morning, the coldest, lowest temperature point of the night, the nervous system has to hold its stability without slipping. And this is where sleep most commonly breaks in older adults. Not because of stress, not because of overthinking, but because the neural wiring itself becomes less steady. Vitamin B12 is essential for maintaining the myelin sheath, the thin protective coating around nerves that keeps electrical signals clean and controlled. When B12 falls, myelin thins. And when it thins, nerve signals become jumpy, firing in tiny irregular bursts, the kind that can jolt the brain just enough to wake you without any clear reason. This is the pattern millions of adults over 60 describe. I wake at 2 or 3 a.m., and I can't explain why. My heart jumps once, and I'm awake. It feels like a switch flipped. No nightmares, no full thoughts, just sudden alertness. In clinical sleep labs, these are called microarousals, small interruptions caused by unstable nighttime nerve conduction. A 2018 paper from the Neurology and Sleep Regulation Program reported that older adults with lower B12 levels had significantly higher microarousal frequency, especially during the cold core hours of the night. Not insomnia, but fragmentation, the night breaking in pieces. One of my long-term patients, Leonard, age 73, had exactly this pattern. He slept easily but woke every night at almost the same time, usually around 2:40 a.m. No thoughts, no anxiety, just awake. We tested his levels, borderline low B12. We adjusted his evening routine: an egg at dinner, a small serving of fortified milk, and a low-dose sublingual methylcobalamin every other night. Within 2 weeks, he told me, I didn't even notice, but I stopped waking up. The nights finally hold together. That's what phase 3 stability feels like when it returns. Unremarkable, quiet, continuous. Timing matters for B12. Unlike folate or vitamin E, B12 can be used in the evening. It does not stimulate the system the way caffeine or sugar does. Instead, it reinforces nerve consistency during the hours when the brain is most vulnerable to fragmentation. For older adults who wake in the exact same window every night, for those who wake with a brief chest flutter, tingling, or sudden clarity, for those who say, my sleep breaks apart after the first few hours, this is the phase in there are and the vitamin that usually needs support. Vitamin B12 doesn't make you drowsy. It makes your nervous system reliable during the hours when sleep is easiest to lose. And once phase 3 holds firm, the rest of the night finally has a chance to stay in one piece. Number 2, vitamin D3. If phase 3 decides whether your sleep holds together at night, phase 4 decides whether your sleep will work tomorrow. This phase is all about timing, the internal alignment that determines when melatonin rises, when it peaks, and when it shuts off. And for older adults, this is one of the most disrupted steps in the entire sleep cycle. Vitamin D3 plays a central role in circadian timing, not because it helps you sleep directly, but because it helps the brain set the clock for the following night. Melatonin is produced based on yesterday's light exposure, yesterday's signals, and yesterday's D3 availability. When D3 drops, which is extremely common after 60, melatonin production doesn't just fall, it shifts. It rises too early or too late, or it peaks at the wrong point in the night, leaving the final hours fragile. Most older adults don't realize this drift is happening. They simply notice patterns like, I get sleepy too early. My nights feel shorter. I wake at 4 or 5 a.m. and that's it. Or the classic, I slept but it never felt deep. A 2020 review from the Sleep Endocrine Network found that older adults with low vitamin D status were significantly more likely to have advanced sleep phase syndrome. An internal clock shifted earlier than intended. Not insomnia, just misalignment. D3 realigns that clock by stabilizing the brain's melatonin timing loop, the biochemical rhythm that determines the next night's sleep. This is why D3 is not taken before bed. It's taken in the evening, ideally with a meal containing healthy fats, so it can influence the brain's clock-setting process for the next 24 hours. One of my patients, Evelyn, age 76, had been waking at 4:15 every morning for nearly a decade. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't in pain. She simply had a circadian rhythm stuck on early mode. We shifted her D3 intake to dinner and increased her exposure to morning light. 3 weeks later, she told me, I didn't even notice the change at first. I just realized it was 6 a.m. the last few mornings, and I was still asleep. That's what circadian resynchronization looks like. Not dramatic, not instant, but steady. D3 also supports nighttime inflammation control, which is why some seniors who wake to use the restroom find the urge becomes less intense over time. When inflammation in the pelvic nerves decreases, nighttime signals calm. For older adults who wake too early, who feel sleepy long before bedtime, or whose sleep never feels aligned, D3 is usually the missing phase. You don't feel D3 working in the moment. You feel it tomorrow night when your melatonin rises on schedule again. And when that rhythm returns, every other phase becomes easier to restore. Number 1, vitamin B6. If the earlier phases prepare, quiet, stabilize, and align the night, then phase 5 is where real sleep is built. This final step is the conversion of tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin, the biochemical chain that decides whether your sleep stays light or deepens into the slow-wave stages that restore memory, repair tissue, and calm the nervous system for the next day. Vitamin B6 is the cofactor that drives this entire pathway. Without enough B6, serotonin stays low in the late evening, and melatonin never reaches the level needed to lock the night into depth. You fall asleep, but hover. You reach sleep, but not the restorative kind. You make it to 4 or 5 a.m., then wake too early, as if the night simply ran out of fuel. This is the most common pattern I see in older adults. Light sleep, vivid dreams, frequent micro-wake-ups, and mornings that feel unfinished. B6 doesn't sedate you. It enables the machinery that should have been operating all along. A 2015 investigation from the Neuroendocrine Sleep Lab reported that adults with insufficient B6 had the lowest melatonin conversion efficiency and the shallowest slow-wave sleep profiles. Exactly the pattern linked to early morning waking and non-restorative nights. Not panic, not stress, just a broken biochemical handoff. One of my patients, Dolores, age 67, described her nights this way. I slept, but it felt thin. She woke at least 3 times a night, not wide awake, just surfaced, then drifted down again. We increased her B6 intake using simple foods, lentils at dinner, roasted pumpkin seeds, and dried plums an hour before bed. Within 10 days, she said something important. It's not that I sleep longer yet. It's that my sleep feels heavier. My body finally rests. That heaviness is slow-wave consolidation returning, and this is exactly why vitamin B6 holds the #1 position. When B6 is low, melatonin production flattens and deep sleep becomes inconsistent. When B6 rises to adequate levels, the entire chain, serotonin tone, melatonin output, and slow-wave depth, begins to correct. Timing matters more here than in any other phase. B6 works best 60 to 90 minutes before bed when the body's naturally shifting serotonin toward melatonin. Not during dinner, not early afternoon. Right before the internal chemistry begins its final transition. For older adults who feel their sleep is light, who wake repeatedly without a reason, or who rise tired despite a full night in bed, this is almost always the missing phase. Vitamin B6 doesn't make you sleep. It makes your sleep real again. Deep, continuous, and restorative, the way it was designed to be. A sleep routine for older adults works best when it supports the specific phase that tends to break down. You don't need all 5 vitamins every day. You only need the right ones at the right time, placed where your biology can use them. Start with dinner. This is where 2 vitamins work naturally with the body's early evening chemistry. Vitamin E fits here because its effect is slow, helping the nervous system reduce baseline activity in the hours leading up to bedtime. Pair it with folate, which supports serotonin tone as the evening settles. For most adults over 60, this combination smooths the transition from daytime alertness to the first quiet layer of night. In the early evening, around 4 to 7 p.m., is where vitamin D3 belongs. It doesn't make you sleepy, it influences tomorrow's rhythm. Taking D3 with a meal that includes some healthy fat gives your body the best chance to reset the timing for the next night's melatonin release. The final steps happen before bed. Here you choose based on your pattern, not habit. If you wake between 2 and 4 a.m., B12 is the more appropriate option. It helps stabilize nerve conduction when the body is at its lowest temperature point. If your sleep feels light, easily disturbed, or unfinished, then B6 is the better match. Taken 60 to 90 minutes before bed, it supports the conversion process that anchors deep sleep. Think of this not as stacking vitamins, but placing them where your night actually breaks. Dinner supports the early phases. Early evening resets the rhythm. Pre-bed reinforces the final transition into depth. It helps to give each adjustment a few days before making another. Most older adults begin noticing changes in 3 to 7 days, and those changes become more stable over the following week. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. Your sleep doesn't need more force. It needs clearer signals delivered at the right moments. When you look at the 5 phases side by side, the pattern becomes much clearer. Sleep doesn't return because you push harder, try more supplements, or change your entire lifestyle. It returns because each phase finally receives the one biological signal it was missing. Vitamin E steadies the early neural activity. Folate helps the mind release the day instead of carrying it into the night. B12 keeps the nervous system stable during the hours when sleep is most fragile. D3 restores the timing that controls tomorrow's melatonin. And B6 completes the final conversion that deepens sleep into the restorative stages most older adults stop reaching consistently. None of these vitamins act like sedatives. They don't override the brain or knock you out. They simply replace signals your system used to produce easily, back when the phases were stronger and more synchronized. When those signals return, even one at a time, the night stops falling apart and starts behaving the way it should. Sleep becomes a process again, not a battle. The most important thing I want you to take from this is simple. Your ability to sleep deeply has not disappeared. It has only become more dependent on the right cues. Cues your body no longer produces as easily with age, but can respond to again with the right support. Older adults often assume their nights are broken for good, or that light, fragmented sleep is just part of getting older. It isn't. When even one phase of the sleep cycle strengthens, the entire night can feel different. Fewer interruptions, less early waking, and a sense of rest that hasn't shown up in years. You don't need to overhaul your routine, avoid half your favorite foods, or try every new supplement that shows up online. Small targeted adjustments, placed at the correct moments of the day, are more powerful than forcing the body to sleep. Your biology still knows what to do. It just needs clearer signals than it used to. As you begin trying these changes, pay attention to the shifts that seem minor at first. Falling asleep a little faster, waking fewer times, or feeling steadier in the morning. Those are early signs that your phases are lining up again. If this video helped you understand your sleep in a clearer, more structured way, let me know in the comments which vitamin you plan to start with tonight. Your experience may help someone else recognize the phase they've been missing. And if you want more science-based guidance created specifically for adults over 60, tap like, share, and subscribe. There's much more to show you, and your best nights are not behind you.